Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Big 12 football schedule released. We review. I've got a bone to pick, and we assess Red Raider fan fever.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code Locked On College for $20 off of your first purchase with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, and a few different things to touch on here today as we are cruising toward another action-packed weekend, looking ahead to Red Raiders and Wildcats Saturday night, and we'll get to setting that table specifically on an upcoming episode before tip-off. But today we'll spend some time in the realm of basketball. I have a compare and contrast question from a Matador Mob insider I was texting back and forth with about earlier this morning. I want to put to you regarding fever. We'll talk hoops. We'll talk football as well among Red Raider fans. But I also wanted to get into, before the week was done, a scheduling conversation here with you today, Chris. We've been so consumed by all the good stuff happening with Grant McCaslin and the Red Raiders that we haven't had much time to catch our breath and look the way of the football program after a 2025 Big 12 schedule has now been released. But wanted to spend a little bit of time with you getting some thoughts on what came to be. And for those watching on YouTube, I will throw it up on the screen if you have not seen it yet, or as a visual reminder. And for those listening via podcast, I'll run it down really quickly. You start with 3 consecutive on your home field: Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, Oregon State. We knew that. And now the good stuff, the details as it pertains to the league. You go on the road for 2 consecutive, visiting Utah and Houston to kick open your league slate. Then you're back in Lubbock to host Kansas October 11th. October 18th, you're in Tempe to take on Arizona State. Back in the LBK to host the Cowboys of OSU. Back on the road to kick off the month of November in Manhattan, Kansas. Sure, the weather will be fantastic. And then back in Lubbock for 2 straight against BYU and Central Florida before you wrap up your regular season Thanksgiving weekend, spending a Saturday in Morgantown, West Virginia. So jogging back to kind of what we talked about prior to the release, not an atypical day for you to kick off a football game. So certainly one thing to note, home or away, you're not going to be making a Thursday or Friday night appearance. Of course, curious about the spacing of bye weeks and how that suits you. And generally, competitively speaking, how you feel like this shapes up for Joey McGuire and the 2025 Red Raiders, man. So how did it sit with you once you had a chance to kind of pour over it?
So, as the first thing I looked at was the non-Saturday games or any existence of that. And I had to look 2 or 3 times to understand there was none. And then I'm like thinking, okay, is there some fine print in the corner of this deal that says, hey, we're going to come back and kind of alter some of this stuff or whatever. But then, you look at the giant matrix and there's already some of these games that have been designated to could have been played on a Friday or whatever. So that's maybe that's just me, but that's the first thing I was looking at. Whether home or away, it didn't really matter. I was just kind of curious to see if there was any of that.
I was right there with you, by the way, because was kind of felt like we were due for that, I guess.
And what I guess I found is that there's not that many league-wide this year. I think that as I'm looking at it, just in general, I think I was trying to see, like there was a couple of these Friday nights where there was going to be one of these like I think West Virginia and BYU is on a Friday on October the 4th. But there wasn't just a whole lot of that inventory, which I think in some ways is great. And then I was looking at Thanksgiving weekend from that standpoint too. Okay, so that was like the one thing I was trying to consume rather quickly as you're like looking at it for the very first time. The second thing was bye weeks. And okay, where do these fall for you? And you are, I think, on September the 27th, you are the only single team in the entire league that's not playing that weekend, which is crazy, as there's some conference and some non-conference matchups mixed in there. So, and then I don't, the other bye week, it's I don't know, it's not like ideal, but it's like at the very end. So the week of I guess the Saturday before Thanksgiving, you're going to be off, and as is West Virginia before you play the following weekend. So there was that, and then selfishly, because I've been in 4-degree Cincinnati weather recently. I've been in snowy Salt Lake City recently. I've been in 10 to 12-degree Manhattan, Kansas recently with there's so much snow on the ground that has zero chance to melt because the temperature just will not cooperate. So okay, where am I going to go be cold? Because I thought, okay, man, you got to go to Salt Lake City this year. You got to go to Manhattan, Kansas this year. And you got to go to Morgantown this year. Odds are you may get one of those doled out to you that could be in the mid to late November months. Sure enough, it will be Morgantown on Thanksgiving weekend. But all things considered, I felt like you kind of, because you could have had a couple of those, where the weather could have, but you're getting Utah in September, and you're getting the Wildcats in early November. I mean, just when I think November 1st. So those were the things that I looked at. Other than that, it seems evenly spaced out. We can get into some of the nuts and bolts of it here, but I was curious your thoughts of it.
Well, aside from the weeknight stuff, which I was having to get the calendar out immediately and see what these days were, what these numbers represented. They all represent Saturdays, so that's good. I was thinking about, okay, where are we spacing out some bye weeks, and how does that kind of relate to road games? I don't know. It's just my perspective as a fan. It may not even be something that resonates with those on the inside, but a lot of times I think about, coming back from a road game as a great time for a bye week on occasion. Some may like it, I don't know, prior to that road game. Potentially you actually get both of those contexts on this schedule, but I like the fact that basically your only road back-to-back that you had, because the others are split up, that would actually be split up by an open date there on September 27th. So I think that's somewhat appealing, kind of able to, not quite like last year, but you're able to kind of segment the early stage of the season. Hey, non-conference and then a conference opener on the road. And, even though Utah had a disappointing 2024, would still anticipate that program to continue to have a pulse and probably some attention on it from a media perspective. So they're going to be back chomping at the bit to get off to a different kind of start and have a different year in the Big 12. So that should be a lively early season ball game that you can kind of circle as well. But then you've got a little bit of a break before you are back at it and back in the great state against Houston. But I don't mind the open date, the final go round as well prior to traveling to Morgantown. I'm just glad you didn't get one of those like open dates post game number 12. Like where all the open dates are, but they'll still kind of call it an open date. We've seen that situation play out before. Doesn't really do you a whole lot of good, but I don't know, man. I'll get to the bone I have to pick in just a moment, and it's really not necessarily related to decisions that were made with this 2025 schedule, but a bigger picture kind of bone picking going to be going on with the Big 12 in just a minute. But competitively, Chris, on the field, not thinking about your body temperature, I do apologize, but actually thinking about football, I kind of like the way she's setting up. There's some tough challenges on the road without knowing what these teams are actually going to be, you would think.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I think we may be kind of back sort of having a conversation similar to preseason a year ago where you're thinking, is this somewhat favorable for the Red Raiders? Now, competitively, it didn't turn out that way because the teams that were on your schedule turned out to be risers, while the ones you thought you were missing were fallers within those projections in the Big 12. But I got to tell you, competitively, I kind of like it, and I might dare to dream of, I don't know, the word Arlington when I see this schedule.
Yeah, there's just 3 of your first 4 conference games are on the road. So bottom line is, if you're going to do any damage in this deal, you're going to have to be a really good road team. There's just no way around it, because this is the year where you get the 4 home and 5 away. But all your road games are tricky in this deal. In fact, some of your tougher games are going to be on the road, because while you don't play TCU or Baylor or Iowa State or some of these programs that could be, in fact, in the contender category, I mean, the Utah one is interesting because that's the one you're going to get out of the gate. And we already know what some of the folks in Vegas, or some of the odds makers, already had them as maybe the favorite of to win the championship or whatever it is, and to it made us scratch our head a little bit. But I mean, if they get their quarterback right, which they've got a kid by the name of Devin Dampier that's going to transfer in there from New Mexico, and he ran for 1,100 yards last year. Their defense was still pretty good. So that's just going to be a tricky game, I think. And Utah will be very motivated and all this stuff from having such a bad year last year, whatever. That's just going to be tricky. And then the Houston game, that's your back-to-back on the road with a bye week mixed in there. And you took their defensive coordinator. You took one of their best defensive tackles. But, I mean, they did beat Kansas State last year in Houston, and I think Willie Fritz is a really good coach. I do. I don't want to bet against him big picture. That one's just going to be a bit tricky, and people are going to look at it on paper and go, heck, man, that's the easiest home game you got. I don't find it I don't know if it will be easy. And you've beaten them like a gazillion times in a row. And so that's just always tricky. So anyway, that's what I was just curious, because it's like an interesting start to this deal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
anyway, and you can even extrapolate that out a little bit further. 3 of your first 4 are on the road, and 4 of the first 6. So you've got to really prove yourself away from home, which has not been an easy thing to do in the Joey McGuire era so far. It's really not ever easy, but obviously that's been a storyline during this era, something you've kind of tried to get off your back as far as that monkey goes. So here's a great opportunity to do it. As far as the bone that I have to pick, Chris, and this is just I'm going to get selfish here. First, today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Whether it's sports, music, comedy, or beyond, we all love going to live events. And now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature trims all the fat to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You'll always find can't beat deals. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I'm taking a look at this schedule. I see the Houston Cougars. All right. Somewhat neighbors. And then I see.
So is this is going to be Baylor and TCU related for you?
And then I see, oh yeah, I'm not seeing Baylor or Texas Christian. I swear it wasn't too long ago. I didn't even see Oklahoma State. I'm not seeing, the Aggies, Longhorns, they're not there either. Quite the deficit here as far as regional matchups. And I mean that even more specifically within the great state. And I'm just one of those fans that I discovered whenever the Big 12 lost the 2 blue blood defectors that they did most recently. And there was so much talk from fans who were freaking out. Pac-12, Pac-12, Pac-12. We got to go to the Pac-12. We got to call the Pac-12, which guys like us already knew that the numbers were in for the Pac-12 and they were going extinct also. They weren't making any money, and we already knew that, so that wasn't tenable. But so much of that kind of revealed to me as a fan when I had to search within, Chris. Like, what do I really want as a college sports fan? And I did figure out at the end of the day, man, I want to play those closest to me. I want to get back to playing the neighbors, so to speak. And this is a pretty light year for that. And I'm still a little, am I ticked? Am I miffed? Am I pissed? That's 3 levels of anger there. I don't know which one I am. But I feel one of them still towards the league office for not giving Texas Tech one freaking game that is maintained year to year. We didn't get one that was protected, not one. And this year, upcoming, will feature the longest running college football series in the state of Texas coming to an end. That's Texas Tech and Baylor as it stands. 1955, I think, was the last time that you didn't get together. Does it matter to anybody at the end of the day? I guess not. But I think from an entertainment standpoint, we're suffering a little bit.
Where does peeved ranked on your miffed?
Non-pissed.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm officially peeved.
I think that's top of the charts right there.
This is the I think that what what won out, right, wrong, or indifferent, is because there's what won out was we want everybody to see everybody. And I think what you see these things in like the SEC, like, man, they don't play this team but once every 8 years. Yeah. Or you don't, each team plays each other twice every 8 years or whatever it is, like these weird existence of being in the same league. And yet you don't really see them ever from a football standpoint. And I guess that ultimately went out, whether it was the TV folks or whether it was the schedule makers or whatever, they felt like everybody seeing everybody more regularly is more important. And I don't, because you didn't play Oklahoma State last year. I don't understand that. You don't play Baylor or TCU this year. And we've known this news for a while once that matrix came out.
But see it. You see it in front of you.
That's right, and because in some ways, to get into the right here and right now, in some ways, I agree with what you're saying, and in other ways, like this particular year, I'm like, man, I'm kind of glad I don't have to mess with Baylor and TCU. I feel like it can only screw me up, and it would sting a lot worse if they were the ones that derailed what you got going or whatever. I don't know, because it's like,
hey, we have a horse named Fearless Champion Chris. I think that doesn't sound very fearless.
Yeah.
Hey, true. Also a layer to those two, they just kicked the dog out of us. Well, Texas Christian didn't, but Baylor did. And we talked about this on the show. After those results, I'm like, dude,
that's fair.
We've got fortnight upon fortnight till we get another.
No, that's fair.
Guys. That's stinging me.
And yeah, the Baylor people that I know enjoy that thoroughly, that they have come up to Lubbock 2 out of the last times and beaten you lopsided fashion.
I would too.
Which is why I enjoyed Scott Drew pounding the scores table the other night in defeat, mind you. And yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up bad memories, but that's
it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I get that part.
What do you think as a fan? Because I know you wear multiple hats, but just as a college football fan, as a Texas Tech football fan, are you glad that won out? Like seeing everybody did win out, or do you wish maybe there was more?
You know what? While I guess maybe I'm asking for something that they can't give me, I wish there was a happy medium, because I do like seeing everybody. I think that's fair. Yeah. I think that I think it's dumb to have these bloated leagues, and it's like, I guess we're in the same conference. I don't even see those guys. I know, don't even know what's going on with their program or whatever, and that bugs me. But I do wish there was some semblance of some protection of, and maybe you can only pick like you can only have the one matchup that's protected, and if that's the case, it's Oklahoma State. That's what's going to ultimately win out for you, because TCU and Baylor have their thing going with each other, and so that's why I just thought, okay, if there's a simpatico kind of rivalry, proximity, because whatever, it's got to be Oklahoma State. They are in the same boat that you are, and yet they didn't really. So that would be, because isn't like Iowa State and Kansas State like one that is not on this deal every year? It's this year because it's in Ireland. But wasn't that one of those non-protected games, which is lunacy to me? So there's only the way the math could work, but it's like telling the BYU and Utah, not every year, or Arizona and Arizona State, not every year. You have to have that.
That's what makes college sports go.
I agree. Protect the regional rivalries. So,
and that led to the question. Speaking of Farmageddon, their non-conference matchup, while in conference together, led to the question about whether or not, as a Tech fan, you would like to see your program maybe scheduling some of these in your league that you're not getting on the league scheduling. I don't hate it. I got to tell you, I don't know. I'm sure there's some cons I'm not anticipating to that, but I don't hate that idea, because I'm strictly a fan. I'm here to be entertained.
I don't either at all. I mean, like I was taught the other night, I was talking to the Baylor folks, and we're talking about football schedule coming out, and they're like, yeah, we've got Auburn and SMU in our non-conference schedule. I mean, one's a playoff team, one's an SEC team that spent a ton of money in the portal and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, we got Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Kent State.
Let's go.
It seems about the same. But my point is that you've got so many of these non-conference dates already set and opponents set, and I don't know what the next matrix looks like, okay, because this is year 2 of it. There's 2 more after, I believe. But then you're getting closer to where TV contracts start to come up, and what do the TV folks want? And then do we get another round of the realignment? All that. So there's just so many questions. Basketball is easier to do this on a year-to-year. Football, man, it's like trying to steer that battleship. You could spin that steering wheel all you want, and it'll barely turn it. So it's just hard to try to maneuver all that. But bottom line is, I hope that you go to Morgantown this particular Thanksgiving weekend with a chance for a lot on the line, as I would hope that when you return home, like you did with basketball the other night, and there's a lot of people waiting at your facility to welcome you back, that could be something in play Thanksgiving weekend this year, because that's the stated goal here. That is the stated goal. And if you go up to Morgantown with not anything to play for, I think it'll be a massive disappointment.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. Thank you for allowing me to complain out loud to the effect of nothing, because I doubt it'll change. But nonetheless, I feel like I've got something off my chest. Thank you for attending my Big 12 2025 scheduling therapy session. Before we get out of here, though, Chris, I do want to get to this, because I thought, speaking of the football program, and since we were just recently coming off of this madhouse environment at United Supermarkets Arena earlier in the week against the Baylor Bears, I had this question from our friend Craig inside the Matador Mob, and was texting back and forth with him about it a little bit this morning. I wanted to put it to you as far as fan fever, fan fervor. First, today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Testing your skills on Prize Picks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, and the best way to spice up any game, anytime. You think you got what it takes to win up to 100 times your money? All you got to do is select 2 to 6 players, pick more or less on their projected stats, place your entry, and boom, you're ready to roll. Prize Picks is not only the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Texas, but Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. With easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories, it's no surprise that Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So get in on the fun and the winning, and download the Prize Picks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. Again, that's our code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you just play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. With Prize Picks, run your game. Simple question, and probably one that does not have actually a correct answer. So we got to hear from everybody on this, whether Matador Mobsters or in the YouTube comments. Which do you feel like, when operating successfully, having a great season, interesting season, something that could be special, which fan base packs the most fervor or fever? You think it is a Red Raider football fan, or do you think it's a Red Raider basketball fan? And I understand the context is not apples to apples. And by the way, we've seen one approach the mountaintop and the other has not. So there's also different motivating factors happening here. There's one stadium that holds 60,000, one holds 15,000. So I get it's a little bit different, but I got to tell you, seeing what we saw again this week at United Supermarkets Arena, the Red Raider basketball fan is not a muted individual, and maybe even a little wilder if you catch him on the right day than a full-throated Texas Tech football fan. I don't know. I didn't really come up with a good answer, man, but what do you think between those two when they're really at a fevered pitch? Okay, well, let's look at it this way, because I think you were at this is in recent examples, and these games were extremely meaningful. I would just say to you, what was the better atmosphere? And don't think about the result, because the results were different here in these two games. But like you want to go the other night versus Baylor with a 15,000-ish in a packed student crowd, like standing at the rafters. Or how about when Big Noon kickoff was just here, and the Colorado game, which was also meaningful. And I knew where you were going.
You didn't get the result. However, it was it was very impressive and hostile.
Madhouse.
Hostile.
Yeah.
And like you had to duck a bit, like objects were flying and being thrown, and people were lubed up, and it was a lot. So I don't know, man. I would say this. I think if given the opportunity, again, you're just asking for a chance, and you have to earn said chance. If given the opportunity, I don't think Arlington would have experienced anything like what Texas Tech would bring to that atmosphere if ever given the opportunity to play for a Big 12 title game in football. I just don't. I think it would. People would drop what they were doing and spend massive amounts of money and all the stuff to, you know, because in basketball is a bit trickier. There's really not the one game, you know, like your Final Four run, you played for a conference championship in Ames, Iowa. There was like 30 of us Red Raiders there outside of the team because Iowa State bought it all up. You go to the Big 12 tournament and you can buy your little sliver, and you ended up losing the first round of the deal. And then you go to the NCAA tournament. There was a lot of fans in Tulsa that year. There was a lot of fans in Anaheim that year. Certainly a lot of folks at the Final Four. But it's like all hands on deck for one venue and one game. Somebody's giving you a trophy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but I do respect the Tech hoops fan base big time because they will. The Fertitta Center remembers. They know. They got a dose. And people have changed their ticket policies because of your football and your basketball fans. And some of these people are both. Right. But it's like asking to pick which one of my children do I love the most. Right. Of course. I mean, don't make me do that. We're all Red Raiders here, and we're all slightly tilted towards the insane. That's a little crazy is good. Common thread. And we cannot be expected to act like we've been there before, quote unquote, because we really mostly hadn't. So sorry, we're probably going to while out, maybe rip our shirts off and then have things to apologize for the next morning. I don't know. Maybe somebody will shoot a 12 gauge out of the back of a pickup on University Avenue. Or maybe you get caught on camera saying things about officiating or something when you I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of brought to you by just happens. And I hope would contribute to any fine as well. I'm just thinking like off the cuff. And again, these are special contexts, but it's just another Texas Tech basketball crowd. Chris Beard back in your arena. Remember that one? People saying this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, sports-wise. And that was that tops anything I've ever been in my entire life. But that was a unique circumstance. But that was because there was anger. There was anger in that building, but there was as much energy and in that building that night as anything I have ever been a part of, and probably ever will be. Yeah. Unique set of circumstances. He didn't get on the plane, and you got the head coach yelling at your former players of his behind the Texas Tech bench with like Norris and I forgot who else was all over there. Tariq Owens. I mean that was. I mean, you got 5,000 people out in the intramural fields doing keg stands at like 3:00, and tip-off's like 6 hours away or something. I mean, it's like what is happening here? And you got the win. Yeah, yes, you did. We'll make sure we continue to let the record reflect. Yes, you did. You got 2 of them that year, as a matter of fact. Chime in, let us know, because I'm sure many of you occupy seats at both venues, the Jones, the USA. What are you feeling? Where's the vibe? Maybe a little bit more inclined to be something wild and out-ish, to use an industry term. Let us know in the YouTube comments or shoot us a text if you're a Matador Mob insider. All right, Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you for the insights. Enjoyed it as always, and still got a couple rounds to go with you before we wrap up the week. We'll have a Matador Mob mailbag coming up, of course, and we'll also get ready for Red Raiders and Wildcats from Tucson. Back to cooking some border conference beef on Saturday night. So plenty of action still to go this week, man. We'll see you then. Yeah, and if you're out there and about and you've got a schedule waiting to be released of any kind, whether it's work, personal, or whatever related, I hope your bye weeks are evenly spaced. I hope that you avoid the cold weather, and that I hope that you have no non-traditional. They don't make you work on a holiday or something like that. So we wish you well out there if you are waiting on a schedule to be released like we were. like we did good here. But yeah, guns up, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good scheduling vibes to everyone across the Locked On Texas Tech family. Thank you all for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Shout out to the Everydayers. Shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes. Find a link for a free 14-day trial if you're interested in becoming a Matador Mob insider. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. Thank you for the time. And once again, we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.